So picture this. One of the biggest political parties in the country is watching its historical base, we're talking about working class voters, just slip away. A new report has a pretty surprising solution, and it's not about outspending the other side. Nope, it's about a completely different kind of candidate. Let's dive right in. All right, so what's the core issue we're looking at? It's the Democratic Party. For years, working class voters were their rock-solid foundation. But now, that foundation's starting to crack, and people are drifting away. And that, you can imagine, is sparking some really serious conversations inside the party about what the future even looks like. And right at the center of all this is something that's frankly pretty surprising. We're talking about union workers. Historically, they've been a Democratic stronghold, almost a given. But not anymore. They are absolutely not a sure thing. So the big question is, what happened? What's changed? Well, the 2024 election really threw a spotlight on this. Get this. More than 40% of union workers reported voting for Donald Trump. I mean, just think about that for a second. That's not just a small crack in the dam. That's a huge, major fracture in what used to be a solid coalition. So where do you even start to figure out why this is happening? Well, as they say, you follow the money. One of the biggest clues is right there in the way money flows through our politics. The whole financial landscape, it's completely different than it used to be, and that's a massive piece of this puzzle. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. It's not about the raw dollars, but the share of the pie. If you go back to the late 90s, union donations made up almost 15% of the party's total haul. Fast forward to 2022, and that number has absolutely tanked. It's less than 3%. Now you'd think, unions just aren't giving as much. But that's actually not the whole story. And here's the twist, because it's a big one. Unions aren't actually donating less money. What's really happened is this absolute tidal wave of money coming in from individual donors. It's just a flood of cash, and it's basically drowned out organized labor's contributions, which in turn has kind of shifted where the party's financial focus is. Okay, so if the answer isn't just about money, then what is it? Well, the report points to a much more direct idea, an approach that's been, for the most part, completely overlooked, and that's to actually go out and recruit candidates who come directly from the labor movement itself. And when I say overlooked, I really mean it. Just how overlooked is this idea? Well, between 2010 and 2022, just 5%, only 5 of all congressional candidates had any kind of union background. That is such a tiny number, and it suggests there's this huge, untapped potential just sitting there. So you might be wondering, okay, why would these candidates be any better? Well, the report gets right into that. It talks about something it calls the union advantage. Basically, it breaks down all the unique skills and, just as important, the credibility that people from a labor background bring with them, both on the campaign trail and when they're actually in office. So let's break that down a bit. I mean, think about it. These are candidates who have a deep, real, firsthand understanding of workplace issues. They don't need a briefing on it. They've lived it. When they talk about labor stuff, they have this built-in credibility. Plus, they've spent years doing the hard work of building coalitions and getting people organized on the ground floor, skills that are absolutely essential for winning an election and for actually governing. And here's what's really striking. This actually goes beyond party lines. The analysis found that representatives with union ties, and this is regardless of whether they're a Democrat or Republican, they are just more likely to push for progressive economic policies. Things like higher minimum wages and stronger worker safety laws. Okay, that all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Well, the report looks at 2 specific states where unions basically said, fine, we'll do it ourselves, and they created their own pipeline to get candidates into office. Let's take a look at what happened. First up, New Jersey. The AFL-CIO there has had a labor candidate program running for more than 2 decades, and the results are, well, they're incredible. We're talking over 1,300 election wins with a 76% win rate. That's just proof positive that this is a viable strategy for the long haul. And you know what? You don't have to wait 2 decades to see results. Just look at Alaska. Their candidate school just got started in 2022, and boom, they've already gotten 8 of their trainees elected. It just goes to show that if you make a focused investment, you can get real, tangible results, and fast. So, stepping back from these specific programs, the report makes an even bigger point. The timing for this strategy couldn't be better. The entire national mood, the whole cultural environment around organized labor, it's shifting in a big way. And that's creating this perfect moment, this real window of opportunity. I mean, look at the numbers. Public approval of unions is literally soaring. It's at its highest point in over 60 years. We're talking around 70% of all Americans having a positive view. And when you look at young people, the numbers are just off the charts. A staggering 88% of Americans under 30 support unions. Okay, so here's the really crucial part. This huge surge in support for unions, it's happening at the exact same time that public trust in pretty much every other political institution is just collapsing. I'm talking about Congress, the media, you name it. And that contrast positions organized labor as this uniquely trusted voice in a really cynical time. And all of this brings us to the report's really powerful conclusion, right? On one hand, you've got this massive, trusted asset, organized labor, with sky-high approval ratings and even a proven model for getting great candidates elected. But on the other hand, as we saw a minute ago, it's an asset that is pretty much just sitting on the sidelines. And so the whole analysis leaves us with this one big, provocative question. The public support is there, the path forward seems pretty clear. It really looks like the American people have faith in the kind of politics that comes from organized labor. So the only real question left is, will the unions themselves seize this moment and step up to take the lead?